You don't need me to tell you that things are a little bit fraught at the moment. A little tense, maybe. Between a rampaging virus that's indifferent to politics and rampaging politicians indifferent to a virus, the world feels a little bit unsure at the moment. Riots in the streets, liars in the broadsheets, illicit deals for toilet paper and PlayStation 5s in our back alleys. I don't know about you, but I found myself wanting to pull back from the world a little bit. Enter the big flower fight. Now, this might seem like a weird way to start a video about a televised flower arranging contest, but right now I don't think you can divorce yourself from context. At the best of times, I wouldn't be making a video about this show, but then again, at the best of times, we wouldn't all be confined to our houses, scraping through the dregs of Netflix like badgers in a skip. For me, Flower Fight has proven to be just the right show for the moment.
You've got 15 hours, and your time starts now.
If we break it down, the big flower fight is essentially just the Great British Bake Off, but with flowers. Netflix's hedge trimming, camera panning, all-around feel-good ode to floral design wears its influence so shamelessly on its sleeve that it barely even feels the need to explain its own premise. This is a reality TV show with an emphasis on eccentric characters being nice and friendly to each other while sweating their tits off in a big tent. In each of the show's 8 episodes, 10 teams of 2 are given several flower-adjacent tasks to complete, like make this bush look pretty or summon Cthulhu using nothing but tulips. And then they kind of just chill around in the sun, gluing daisies together for a few hours until one of them has to go. It's nice, it's inoffensive, and like Bake Off, it sharply avoids the cynical pitfalls of a lot of reality TV. The world can be a dark place. Bake Off, and by extension Flower Fight, are anything but.
I'm quite dominant. And Yanis too.
The first episode, for example, tasks our contestants with creating giant insects out of living plants. A lot of TV shows might ham up the grody bug angle or use the large scale of the task to ratchet up the interpersonal tensions between the contestants. But this doesn't. Instead, this is just a relaxing 40 minutes spent watching people getting along in the rare British sunshine while talking about cool bugs and plants. I've seen a lot of Bake Off's imitators over the years, and none of them have done the people being competitively lovely thing quite as well as Flower Fight. I think a lot of it comes down to the technical groundwork, from quaint hand-drawn illustrations of contestants' creations to soaring drone shots of the English countryside. This show does a great job of making this kind of flower arranging seem important, even when the contestants are just shamelessly slapping paint on a hydrangea and titling it Depression. Back in 2010, Bake Off found reality TV lying face down in the gutter, bought it a meal and taught it the value of self-respect, and Flower Fight keenly follows in its footsteps. There are no MTV-style quick cuts or close-ups on people crying while Requiem for a Dream plays in the background. Generally, the editing avoids sensationalism, and there's a considered filmic quality to the way everything is shot and arranged. Whoever was in charge of the reveals at the end of each episode is particularly deserving of their own mention, because they look like they were lit by God themselves. These are the kinds of images they use to sell TVs you can't afford. Look a little deeper though, and Flower Fight isn't just a Bake Off clone. Beyond the pristine framing, there's something just a little bit spicy bubbling under the surface. Flower Fight is a well-constructed show, there's no doubt about that, but I think my favourite parts are when we get to see the cracks around the edges of this perfect veneer, and it all starts with the hosts.
Prepare for some serious avant-gardening.
First of all, we have Vic Reeves. In spite of the overt goofiness that marked his ascent up the comedy ladder in the 80s, Reeves is actually surprisingly awkward here, kind of like a cross between your uncle loitering at a party in his ill-fitting Joe Brown shirt and a schoolteacher trying to make conversation with a student they've just run into in a supermarket. There's a sense that he's not really taking the show all that seriously, and not in the twee Mel and Sue way seen in Bake Off, but more in the eyes on the exit, hands in his pockets kind of way that feels weirdly grounded and human. With a premise as esoteric as competitive flower arranging, he almost feels like an audience surrogate, someone who's just as confused by the whole thing as you are. And beside Reeves, we have Natasha Dimitriou. She's a bit more composed, although most of her investment seems to be reserved for bad puns.
Sit. Stay.
She's really unafraid to go for even the corniest of jokes, picking fruit so low-hanging it might as well be compost, to the point at which it borders on Kaufman-esque performance art. Both of the hosts kind of meander around the tent looking and being awkward, respectively, and it reveals a warts and all undercurrent in the editing that seems to revel in the amateur and the awkward. So on the one hand, you've got this gorgeously arranged show about gorgeously arranged flowers, and on the other you've got these two quietly undermining it at every juncture. The end result is a show that's kind of off-kilter, and on some level I feel like everyone in the show, led by the host's example, is leaning into it. It's the reason why when these guys take a step back and realise that they've spent 3 hours haphazardly hanging flowers off a trellis, they say, oh, it's a message about the environment.
In an abstract form, the devastation that's happening.
It's a warning sign.
Yeah, it's a warning sign to what we're doing.
To cynically try and rebrand their failure as a statement, or why, in one case, we watch contestants resort to straight-up larceny. The boundaries of the format are being stretched and prodded. This doesn't feel as dignified, as concerned with respectability as a bake-off, and it gives the whole thing a weirdly anarchic tone. And with a premise like this, what other tone could it have? I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about flowers. I couldn't tell you the difference between a lotus and a lily, any more than I could tell you the difference between this show's format and bake-offs, but I think I know enough to spot a stretched premise when I see one. I think I like this show because it isn't actually a real thing. Flower arranging is a thing, floristry and agriculture too, but this show is a Frankensteinian mash of disparate disciplines, all in the name of creating giant trimmed-hedge T-Rexes. The contestants seem to know this, the hosts definitely know this, and so they're just having fun with it. It's a weird blend of professional and awkward, and it kind of works.
People are trying to steal my flowers. This is like a flower fight.
By episode 2, we begin to see more clips of the contestants revealing that, hey, they don't know what these flowers are called either. If you're expecting the educational treatment of Bake Off, in which 10-minute chunks are set aside for a brief history of the hydrangea, then you're out of luck. From here on in, flowers will largely be referred to as the red ones or the fluffy ones, like children calling out crayons at a creche.
This sphagnum moss.
Yeah.
Is it?
It is.
Yes, I got one right.
As a fellow illiterate in the language of floristry, I kind of appreciate it. Let's dispense with the charade that I'm going to internalise anything about the legacy of King George as it relates to what's happening on screen. I came to watch people make dinosaurs out of the contents of a B&Q garden centre. I'll leave my brain at the door. So ultimately, for a show that's so technically well produced, there's a quiet sense of the inmates running the asylum that you don't get in a bake-off. Thanks to the hands-off hosting, you get the feeling that no ground rules were ever really set up. Hence why every time new plants become available, the show ends up looking like a cross between Supermarket Sweep and The Purge. Beyond that though, I do also think it's a credit to the general diversity of the contestants. This is kind of a wacky lineup, and it really complements the show's wackier atmosphere. Bake Off can often feel too proper, too British, like grimacing through the comments section of The Telegraph, whereas this selection is more like 6 PM in B&M bargains. Anything goes, so you've got two guys who missed the memo that this was a flower show and take every opportunity to hammer together frames out of wood. You've got conceptual artists who look like escaped mannequins from an Oxfam shop. And you've got this wholesome father-son combo that seemed to have fallen out of an Aardman animation. These are just good, interesting, wholesome characters. And the glue that holds everything together is this guy, the primary judge, Kristen Griffith van der Yacht. A man who I can only assume was told he was headed to New York Fashion Week and stuck around just to save face. Kristen is a professional florist by trade, and so he takes the whole thing a little bit more seriously than everyone else. In effect, this means that he plays the role that the disgruntled parent does in a Twisted Sister video. A po-faced comedic straight man for all of the show's more anarchic tendencies to bounce off. All considered, there's really a staginess to this mix of characters that you don't often see in British reality TV shows. Which isn't to say that the show is any more or less fake than its peers, but just that they've done a really good job of casting it. Flower Fight has the large personalities, the absolute large hams that you would usually expect from an American reality show, but retains enough of that bake-off optimism that encourages its contestants to spur each other on and trim each other's hedges, that it doesn't feel too manufactured either. So in the end, it's trashy and anarchic, but also homely and warm.
Okay, everyone, time's up. Step away from your huge, highly groomed animals.
Judgment time!
Judgment time!
When all is said and done though, I'm sure there are some people out there asking, why not just watch Bake Off? There are a billion seasons of it, and it doesn't have the cynical stink of Netflix money surrounding it. And admittedly, Flower Fight won't be for everyone. It's very much the Digimon to Bake Off's Pokemon, or for my older viewers, the Deep Impact to Bake Off's Armageddon. But you know what? I actually like Deep Impact. Right now, in 2020, Bake Off feels too much like a relic of a distant world, a time when we still had luxuries like hope and hand sanitizer. Flower Fight has enough danger, enough of a sense that the production is ready to fall apart at the drop of a hat, not least when they're fashioning floral hats, that it feels more fit in for the times. It isn't gonna change the world, but if you've already topped out your social feed for the 10th time today, it's a nice break. It's pleasant, but not twee, sarcastic, but not mean. For a brief escape from the world outside, I can't think of anything better. Pop on some headphones, press play, and let it wash over you, like Zen meditation for people with noisy neighbours.